Go.
Hello, it's Nerds of Legend, and we're here today on a Monday to talk about the Norse Pantheon. You've seen him in films, I've seen him in anime. We're going to be covering Thor and Loki, the two big boys of Norse mythology, if you're not thinking of their dad, Daddy Odin. And we'll be covering probably an entire episode over these two, their rivalry, their history, lots of polymorphing and backstabbing and child sirening and all sorts of strange weirdness that comes out of the Norse Pantheon. I have with me today my compatriots, Ben and Joel. With beards alone, they are closer to the Norse Pantheon than I ever could be. So I have them with me today on my quest.
Cute pose. Well done, Ben.
Yeah, excellent cute pose there.
Yeah.
So do we want to start with Thor, or do we want to start with Loki first, or... We briefly covered them a bit, I think, on our first episode of the Aesir and the Vanir and the Jotun.
We talked a little bit about some origins, but I don't think we really got into it. So for those of you who don't know, let's kick it off with Thor, the thunder god, the big, tall and beardy and blonde and all that stuff. He's got a big old hammer. He's the god of thunder. He's kind of one of like the favorites in Germanic mythology. He's basically often got used as a sort of route to conversion to Christianity, because basically when the Christians came around, they were like, well, like your Thor guy, that's like pretty much who Jesus is. And they're like, oh, so he's Jesus, but he's Thor, but he goes by Jesus. Okay, I can swim with that.
I feel that's the biggest stretch since modern day evangelism.
Yes, they kind of just like used him a little bit as that, but he's sort of like considered the most honorable warrior and loyal in Norse mythology,
but not the brightest.
Not the brightest.
Nowhere near the brightest. Near the brightest. Thor, the rivalry between him and Loki is probably some of the best storytelling of any bunch of myths that I've ever heard. I'll let Ben go back.
So what's interesting is like when I was like, I know that's like a thing in like the comics, but I didn't come across of like a big like Thor Loki like rivalry, and
not like in the MCU.
I'm talking about in the actual mythology. Like
no, I know you are. I'm talking like not in like in the MCU, they're always like pranking each other, but it's not that epic. But when he does do it, it is over the top.
Yeah,
and again, like one of the best ones is where he stole his hammer and gave it to some giants, promising them to marry once again Freya. I want to see like a painting of what the what the Norse believed her to look like, because she had to have been prime, because everybody is like, so I'll do all this stuff for Freya.
Yeah,
the classic story of Thor and Loki is where he gives them the hammer. So it gives the giants a hammer so that they can marry. So one of them can marry Freya, and then Thor takes its place, and first comes to the wedding feast where he eats, I believe, a whole cow, and to get his hammer back,
and three kegs of
mead. Yeah. Thor was a god of excess, and there was no subtlety to this man whatsoever.
Yeah. So like pretty much like the reason there's like this balance between Thor and Loki is like Thor was kind of like, this is the pinnacle of a Viking man should be, and Loki is the yin to like Thor's, like the yang to Thor's yin, sort of, so to speak. Yeah. Loki is like everything that a Scandinavian or everything that a Viking should not be. He was like mischievous. He's malevolent. He's doesn't ever come out and fight. He never says what he means. He's just like this mischievous little trickster. But
the thing that was so amazing about Loki is, and my primary source of reference for this is Neil Gaiman's Norse Gods, which is a wonderful book. It's an easy book. If you're a Gaiman fan, it flows so beautifully. But But one of the things that surprises me is Loki sucks. And yet every time he's like, my bad. And they're like, it's cool. It's cool. You almost got us all killed and Freya captured again. But you know what? You could still come sit at the table. Like, he did so much shit.
So,
until he eventually killed Balder, and then convinced Hod to kill Balder with the mistletoe spear, and then there's different tellings. I mean, if there's the spear that he fashioned out of mistletoe, there's a dart that he masked out of mistletoe. All you know, it's a pointy thing that he made out of mistletoe. Stabbed Balder with it, and he died. He had the blind god Hod.
That's a very gross oversimplification of that myth, Joel.
It is but we're not talking about the death of Balder and Hod right now. We're talking about Loki and Loki conning him into
Dragon Ball Z.
There is a massive story behind that one and how, but we're not talking about that one. We'll get to that one in a different one. So the thing that gets me is a lot of the stories of Loki are, he does shit for very little reason.
So
you're like, what's his master plan? And it literally is like, cuz.
His primary motivator is what's going to cause the most mischief, chaos, and or going to be the funniest thing in the moment.
Right.
And he's pretty much that prankster friend that you have that, like, does a prank, and then it, like, goes horribly wrong, and he's like, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh shit, I didn't mean it, I'm sorry.
But then, on a different note, like...
And then he fixes it, because...
Thor has no sense of humor.
Yeah.
Like, Thor does not know. It's like, these two couldn't be more different. Like, Thor has no sense of humor, but is fiercely loyal to Loki. But, you know, his brother, he loves his brother, and he wants to love his brother, but... And then Loki's kind of, like, just upset because he's not a son, he's an adopted son, and that bothers him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, like... The big thing, we were getting a little sidetracked here because we were talking about Thor. So Thor, obviously, he's got his hammer. He's got Mjolnir. He's also has this. He has a sort of mortal enemy known as Jormungandr, which is
also a child of Loki.
So we're not at Loki yet. We're talking about Thor.
You're talking about Loki's kids. Loki's got some freaky kids.
Yeah.
Loki needs to stop fucking. That's his. Yeah. That's
so we'll get there.
All right. Just turn my mic off and be quiet.
Yeah, shut up. But basically, Thor's got this mortal enemy known as Jormungandr, who's the serpent that encircles the world, or Midgard. And there's one of his big myths is that he went on a fishing trip one day with some giants, and he hooked Jormungandr while fishing, and tried to pull him out of the ocean, and he almost did it, but then his the giant companion he was with got so freaked out that he cut the line, and then Thor got really mad. Thor and Jormungandr are prophesied to end each other at Ragnarok. So basically, that's kind of like where Loki comes into a lot of this is Loki's got these monstrous giant kids. So like he's got Jormungandr, who's the world serpent. He also has another child by the name of Fenrir, who is the giant wolf who is chained to the moon, and I believe So Fenrir basically eats the moon, and then someone puts it back together at some point. But basically, Fenrir will eventually break his chains and kill Odin, or Odin and Fenrir will kill each other. And finally, there's one time where Loki decided to be really tricksy. He's if you didn't know, he's a shapeshifter, but he can also shift both sex and shape. So he turned into mare, got fucked by a giant stallion, and gave birth to Sleipnir, the six-legged horse on which Odin rides. And also he gave birth to Hel, or Hela, who is the ruler of the Hells in Norse mythology. Yeah.
She rules over the land of the dishonored dead.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a disproportionate sibling rivalry there. Mm-hmm. Like, he's like, all right, I had a couple kids out of this one. Which one is this? One, giant wolf. What's the other one? The horse and the god of the dead.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a major upscale from the god of lies and mischief to, like, what are you? Lord of the underworld. I feel like that's a...
I mean, to be fair, both of those kids are going to come around and, like... basically all of those kids are foretold to be like the ones that will bring about the end of the world. But
yeah, literally all of Loki's kids are the source of Ragnarok.
Yes.
They're like, what about the other stuff? What about the giants, our ancient enemy? They're like, that they don't have time for that.
See, if Loki had the premonition to bet so much on Sleipnir in any form of horse racing, Sleipnir would be far, far more important. If he bet
that's house, what you're taking out of this one? Is if Loki was a betting man? Loki was a betting man. That's why he had to turn into a horse and go fuck the other horse.
If he had wanted some side action at maybe the Arlington racetrack before they sold it to the Bears, just put it all on red. Maybe like bet, like, hey, I'll bet you the end of the world that my Sleipnir won't beat your lame-ass four-legged horse in a 2-mile track.
How has there not been a racehorse named like Son of Sleipnir or something yet? That's what I'd like to know.
I feel like this sounds like a job for Google.
Like if I was into making racehorses and I had a fucking ringer, I'd be like Son of Sleipnir right there.
And Ben, your firstborn son's name is Maximus, so you're going hard naming everything. There's people out there with far less exciting names, not only for themselves, but for their dogs, their cats, their horses. I mean, Seabiscuit? He could have been...
That is a name that radiates power and speed. I don't know what's wrong with him.
I'm pretty sure, let's see, Basalt Monolith of quaking power is probably more masculine than Seabiscuit.
No, yeah.
I mean, you could really, really ham it up.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just reading through a couple other Thor facts here, because there's a whole thing about...
There's a ton.
Yeah.
There's massive. Like, his journeys into Jotunheim go on forever. His sons, Magni and Modi, that are the survivors of Ragnarok, to be the ones that help restart the Pantheon. There's so much going on.
Yeah.
Yes, there is actually a thoroughbred horse named Sleipnir.
Yeah.
That was a runner.
Oh, well, good to know. I'm glad somebody has taste.
Somebody
telling you, someone was on the same wavelength as me. It's like, I need to put some action on the Sleipnir.
Yep. But Sleipnir was not sired by Loki. He was sired by a horse named More Than Ready and Jolie
Bay. That sounds like a real racehorse.
More Than Ready and Jolie Bay.
More Than Ready, and the dam was Jolie Bay.
What the hell?
So that was a disappointing journey we took it. I feel bad for
Those are appropriately stupid names for racehorses.
Yeah, they're horrible. Yeah. The guy's like, More Than Ready and Jolie Bay. What are we naming our child? Sleipnir. Yeah. Feel like, and then that horse only made $19,000, so kind of sad.
So I did misspeak around like the Thor connection with Christianity. So like actually what happened when Christianity started popping up around Scandinavia and the Vikings. So the Vikings were very actually tolerant. Like the Scandinavians were very tolerant towards other gods because when you got a whole I misread a thing earlier in the article.
Yeah, I was like, this is all new information.
Basically, the like the Vikings and Scandinavians were very tolerant towards worship of other gods because, I mean, when you've got a pantheon, who's to say that, like, you can't just add a couple more? So the problem started when the Vikings tolerated Christianity because they just viewed it as like, oh, this is just like this is like the cult of Odin or cult of Thor or whatever. It's just these people that like this dude on a cross. And the problem arose when the Christians had no intention of being tolerant towards these other cults that existed.
This is shocking to nobody, but Christians don't like sharing.
So basically what ended up happening was this sort of rise of the cult of Thor in Scandinavian times, where in contrast to Christians who would often wear crucifixes or crosses around their necks, the Vikings started wearing the symbol of Mjolnir, and there's actually been archaeological discoveries where these pendants started showing up exactly when Christian influence would show up in the area. So
kind of like a stay the hell away.
yeah.
Like that was their version of the no solicitor sign. To
Basically, like we're gonna pick our like most. I was like, all right, these guys aren't going away. Let's pick our most like best god that we've got, and worship him or whatever. So, or like put it out there, so to speak. Let's see.
Yeah, it's definitely somewhat of a Hollywood trope.
Yeah.
To focus on the exceptional violence and raiding and warlike behavior of the Vikings. You got to remember, there's the Varangian Guard. They served in Roman legions. They were mercenaries in Egypt. Their nautical skill enabled the Vikings to travel very far, and they didn't just attack everyone. Right? Life is violent, brutish, and short if you just try to attack everybody. They were exceptional sailors, but they were also traders. They found materials that the Vikings worked with and fashioned with that did not come from Scandinavia. So they were, their naval aptitude actually increased their trade, their visibility. There's references to the potential that they found the New World first and all this stuff. It's because of how prolific they were with their sailing. Their beliefs and languages and trade skills are no different. They weren't nearly like season 1 of Vikings, where yes, they did attack monasteries on the English coast, and there were conflicts and invasions of England and Ireland and France. But guess what? They were also pragmatic.
Everybody else was doing that too.
Yeah, and when Odo was like, "Hey, we're going to give you silver and give you this rocky land that nobody else can cultivate called Normandy," what did the Vikings do? They're like, "All right, we'll take it."
Yeah. And then when there was another famine, they were like, all right, time to go raiding again. Oh boy, here I go raiding again.
This time, they were Christian. Yeah. They were heavily armored. They were all nobles.
Yeah.
And they just happened to win the throne of England.
Yeah. In the process.
Yeah.
What's an interesting thing about Thor is while he's simultaneously this god of like war and destruction and, thunder and storms, is his hammer, which is like as a very destructive force, is also seen in the mythology as one of like hallowing or sanctifying abilities. So he actually would be known to he would often like kill and eat the goats that drive his chariot so that he could have something to eat.
I feel like you just glossed over that whole thing. Of the goats.
Oh yeah, so he's got these goats that he's got.
Just the goats.
So he's got a chariot. I was just wanting to talk about the hammer, so it's in the sort of mythology of Thor. He's often seen as a. He would drive across during storms. He would ride across the sky in a chariot drawn by goats. Sorry, but
yeah, their names are Tooth Grinder.
Yeah,
and which I'm gonna really try to.
These aren't like the little like fainting goats. These are big boys.
Yeah, these are. I'm gonna try to pronounce it in Old Norse. It's Tangrisnir, which is Tooth Grinder, and Tangnosnir, which is Tooth Gnasher.
Yeah.
Angnosnir.
Yeah. Nope. Mispronunciation. Tooth Grinder, Thin Teeth is the other one.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah, sorry. It was a story I thought of a different one. But yeah, he was given these goats. He was asked as a reward, what do you want? And he's like, you can get anything. And this is in the Prose Edda.
Yeah.
Is where it came from. And he was given the option of anything. And he's like, I want goats that I can kill and eat, and then they'll come right back. And they're like, that's that's weird. But apparently they suffered absolutely no trauma and were still willing to pull his cart.
Because
after
they wouldn't even know what happened. He'd basically just caved their skulls in and it was lights out. So it was like, whatever.
But the difference was he, with these goats, he had to be careful with it. Like, according to the Prose Edda, again, if he hurt any of the goats, they would be permanently injured. So one of them, while he shared the meat with a peasant who was starving, he shared goats with him and their children, whose name is Falfi, broke one of the goat's bones to suck out the marrow. I permanently lamed one of the goats.
Well, because part of it was like, it's in order to like bring the goats back, he has to gather all the bones and wrap them up, gather all of the goat bones, wrap them up in their hide, and then he has to touch the hides with the hammer, and it would resurrect them. Yeah. So like, because that bone got fucked up, then the goat was like never good again. But like, So, but I think that's where Thunder came from, right? Him riding his goat chariot, because that's exactly what Thunder sounds like, is a goat chariot. Anybody who's ever heard Thunder or goats, just hear
very distinguishable.
It was just the cheeks clapping, the massive juicy dumpers on these goats, just clapping across the sky.
What is the matter with you?
You're in a mood today.
Have you ever been to a farm? Have you ever been?
I used to have goats.
Livestock goats have massive asses, big hind legs.
Are you sure you're just not imagining what you wish goats look like? Because I had goats till I was like 11. I raised them. I milked them. I birthed them. All these other ones. I never was like,
I worked for an agricultural company.
Look at that sweet ass on that goat.
I didn't say it was sweet. I said it was big.
I said it was a big juicy dumper. You're a pervert. That's all there is to it.
That's a
next thing you know, he's going to start talking about how they're giant testicles. But
yeah, like,
you don't know the gender. Does it say they're male?
I would assume they're male.
You just assumed the goat's gender.
I did.
Stop trying to be.
I did assume the goat's gender.
Oh, he did.
Literally. Stop trying to be progressive for something that happened like 1,300 years ago. Assume everything was male in these stories.
Wait. Do you think it actually happened? Is that what you worded?
Yeah.
These are real goats?
These are real goats. These are real flying goats. Norway was a very badass place years ago. Now it's not.
All right, so.
No, nobody believes it. Well, somebody believes this happened.
Moving on.
Moving on from sweet goat asses.
So we've hit some like main Thor points. So we might as well talk about his.
Okay.
He was the hallmark of the might makes right type move. Like he was. It's funny nowadays when everybody thinks Thor and they think Chris Hemsworth and they think like he's clever, he's smart, he's from this technologically advanced, wonderful society, which would have been great. But Asgard was not. Asgard was essentially like a massive mead hall where they would just drink and tell stories. And Thor got in as much trouble, I think, as Loki from drunken brawling as Loki got in for shit talking. So there's so many stories of like him going into Jotunheim doing dumb shit and, just getting into a brawl for no reason. He's not clever. Yeah. And this personified the mentality of the people then of if I'm capable of taking it from you, it's mine.
Yeah. Yeah. So on that side of, you have Thor, whose might makes right. On the other side of the coin, you have Loki, who's the sort of the embodiment of that.
If I can get you to say yes, it's all right.
If I can trick you into saying, if I can trick you into giving me your shit, it's mine.
Yeah.
He was a purveyor of pernicious perfidy.
Yeah.
Nice.
That was actually very impressive. Dribble that you just flopped out of your mouth. Still impressive.
We gotta. All right, interesting. Okay.
What?
So Lola Levain says she dated a guy who worshipped Thor and his clan was dope as fuck, but definitely very homely and earthy. Not sure what to take from that, but
I would like more detail from that.
I feel like I think I need more details, Lola.
Yeah, I want the story. I want right now.
You can't just drop that and walk away.
Something tells me that their music was fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. I want her to join our Discord immediately and get on and tell us more about this. Like I need that.
Actually, as often as she's been commenting, she needs a fucking.
Send her a Discord link. Get in there. Yeah. Tell her to get on here. Tell us all about this. I love the ideas of the old ones. Like there's David's got a really good friend that's a pagan and practicing, and I've always wanted to ask him, but he lives in Washington. That he's like a professional bladesmith, so I also want to ask him more questions about that.
There's a pagan student association at Northern Illinois, and they talked about using runes to scry and to see into the future with clairvoyance and so on.
Yeah. You know, I am mixed on that. Like it's more accepted now, but back when I was in high school and people were talking about like, oh, we're pagans, what that really meant was we just watched The Craft 3 times in a row. Now we're witches. And you're like, that's not any of it. Like there are so many established pagan belief systems out there. They're like, no, I'm the one that wears all black. And you're like, that's not a thing.
Especially when you realize that the literal definition of pagan is anybody that's not Christian. Or it's not an Abrahamic religion.
Right. And I really did enjoy, like, I wanted to meet somebody who gives me insight. Why do you do this? How do you practice a faith that is so, like, we're in a world where pretty much it's like, especially Europe and America, like, it's heavily steeped in Christianity. Like they won the religion war, at least for the time being. Like, I don't know how history will remember us. But, you know, to meet somebody who's from an older religion, you're kind of like, that's odd, you know, like, how did that happen? Especially when you're raised solely thinking there's only one, you know?
Lola said she was definitely pagan after watching The Craft.
So it's like, that's the gateway drug is The Craft, huh?
If witchcraft is real and all witches are hot, by the transitive property of geometry, you're going to get a lot of pagans from watching that movie.
No,
I can't really, you know, argue with that. Like I too was like, I have never seen a more bangable group of practitioners in my life.
Purely logic and reason.
Yeah, it's the only logic and reason is that's why The Craft automatically gets you hot chicks. That's how it goes. That was also the gate of Firuza Balk, the time of where like she was unnecessarily creepy, but still like boner fuel at the time. Yet you're like, she's terrifying, yet still doable.
I've known people that did worship the Norse gods, and they never had a bad taste in music.
No, they don't. That's part of Norway.
That's one thing I can take away from it. Comparing it to maybe like HEMA, historical European martial arts, and like live action role playing, and generally you see a fandom in Europe that just really applies itself to its history and to its background, and then the United States, like even early 80s you had cosplay, and early 80s you had LARPing.
We didn't call it that though. We just called people nerds.
Yeah, because you know, prototypical. But as the application of applied nerdom, right, like 400 level classes of nerdom in Europe picks up, you know, like the early aughts or the 90s and so on, you sort of see that come back across the water, and we're like, oh my gosh, there's a problem in Norway in the 90s with people burning churches and stuff.
Yeah, the black metal movement, that was like super...
yeah. So people died. People, you know, perished inside these churches when they were burned down from black metal practitioners who
you've got like Burzum and do you want
God, that's a whole different one. We could talk about that. It's a whole different one. But the Norwegian black metal was like the most intense scene that Which is
Definitely.
funny. Which is funny. Like, I remember I was listening to the last podcast on the left, which is an amazing podcast. So if you ever get a chance to listen to it, it's amazing. Where they talk like it started because life was too good in Norway. So they didn't have anything to bitch about. So they just like, we're going to be just evil incarnate.
It's a utopia. It's a utopia.
But like, I'm like, you're still evil incarnate, but you're entertaining people. Like, I really doubt like the medieval Lucifer is sitting there being like, what are you going to do? Sick licks on my guitar. Well, lute at the time. Like, it just, to me, is still an entertaining form of absolute evil. So maybe you're not that dark. But it is fun music.
Yeah. Sorry, distracted. Lots of things going on at the moment.
Is she on now? Is she going to join us?
Hold on.
That's stellar. Tell her to do this.
Yeah, she joined, I think. Hold on.
Stop playing with your phone and get on there.
That's why I'm on my phone.
I'm going to blame you for stuff.
He's invoking the power of Thor
Is that what he's doing?
in his small device. Yeah.
I'm in the mainframe.
Yeah, that's said by the followers of Thor.
On him. Dada,
Huh.
Please tell me that's 40K.
He's like, no.
Start him early. Hey, speaking of the influence of the Norse religions, the space wolves in 40K, Nordic half wolf, right? Space Marines. Ben would be talking about it right now if he wasn't currently busy, because they're
Yeah, he's not like doing
probably
a
one of his
podcast or
favorite
anything. It's cool.
Oh no, oh no.
It's fine. He's not doing anything else. It's good, Ben. Good. I'm glad you're prepped, ready to go. He's also muted, so it makes it even better. So we can just put whatever the hell we want to say it is.
Lola, you've been added to the streaming table.
Right. So
Go to the streaming table in the Discord channel.
Yes, do it. So yeah, Ben's microphone, you're back on. Good. Oh, Wei Fu, hello.
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 Hello. Tell us your story. Learning a story there.
It was like the summer after I graduated high school. I met this guy online. His parents were Christian, but he had an experience where he like saw a vision of a giant monster or something in the sky.
He did mushrooms, didn't he?
That's awesome. Who cares? That's a good start.
It was a pretty cool story, but then he believed in Thor, and he had a clan of people who all like focused on Thor. Like they believed in all of them, obviously, but like Thor was their guy.
Yeah,
their clan leader.
Go ahead.
The clan leaders were these two gay guys, and one was kind of like burly bear type, and the other was like this tiny little like flowers in the garden, had like this doll that he said a ghost inhabited, and that ghost like watched over their property, and they had like this really cool stone path that was like organic stones, like not like found stones, not just like we went and bought a bunch of the same stones. There was like moss over everything. Their whole yard was like a free-range garden. I did a midsummer event with them one time where everybody in the area kind of camped out in this big foresty field. We like ate food off the fire, drank mead out of like goat horns.
I'm loving all of this right now. This sounds like
it was
so
really
much better
awesome.
than just.
Is this the thing back you used to go to, Brendan?
Yeah, so the Pagan Student Association actually timed excursions to Central Illinois based on the time of the year. So like there was a Samhain event where there were like 300 people camped out in farmland, and some guy rented out the land and so on. But this sounds like
better.
This is so much better than going to church.
Yeah.
Because for Tim's thing, didn't they just go to like Three Sisters Park or whatever?
Yeah, and then they were like, if you didn't know people of the right tribe, you just were stuck in your own tent. And it's like, I wanted mead, I want to hang out. And so there's like this kind of outsider mentality. This sounds like an entire.
Can you tell us about some of the rituals that they did there? Like some of the things that, like, how was the worship like done? How did they celebrate? Like, I mean,
so there was another. They also like they taught everyone axe throwing and archery, which I just think is important to throw in there because it was super cool.
yeah,
There was only
absolutely.
about
Anytime
30
a
of
pointy
us.
anything is involved is awesome.
So there was a lot of sitting around campfires and telling stories and singing music. I do believe there was only one real religious ceremony, and I was a little nervous to participate, but I did. And they basically everyone came into like this circle that they kind of, cast their circle, and all of us, stood in a little line, and they went around, and I want to say we all drank from the same horn, and they would say something, and you were supposed to say something back, and then they like hold it up, and you take a drink. And I think it was just like blessing and honoring Thor or something.
Nice.
It was pretty simple, but really cool.
Then
It was,
I
like, the middle of
tripped
the night.
balls. No, I'm kidding. Sorry.
I was also only like 17,
Oh.
so I was like off getting drunk with a bunch of adults I did not know doing things I had
Oh.
never done before.
Problematic.
That's still a pretty epic story though. Like to get there and
Sounds sick. Also problematic, but
In terms of like being seized by Vikings, that's probably the tamest,
yeah.
tamest example I can think of.
yeah, seized by Vikings.
What?
I don't really think they're just going to be like, you want to get drunk and be in a circle. No, there's a little bit more to being seized by Vikings. But I think modern Vikings probably are a little bit less intense than old G Vikings.
Yeah.
You know,
Over here anyway. In Norway in the
There was-
90s, you gotta watch out.
Yeah, or 90.
There's
That
There's
was
one
awesome.
other thing that they did, which is where the first night when we were all like getting drunk, like they pulled the meat out, everyone sat in this big long line of picnic tables. And one by one, like for hours, people just kind of stood up and like would cheers in memory of people and like tell a story about people that had died or other things. And it was actually really cool. So it was like getting drunk, but also like very community.
Oh. Yeah.
That's awesome.
sick.
Oh, just scared this young lady to death.
What'd you do to me, father?
She was zoned in on the microphone. I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
I like the idea of like honoring the family and those that came before you, like coming in and telling the story of somebody that's passed. That's kind of like the entire way that the Vikings would do all of their ceremonies. Like when they would do any of their readings, that was the purpose of the mead hall, was to tell the story of my family and the battles and the things like that. You know, make your ancestors proud and whatnot. Everything. We don't. As somebody who was raised Christian, you don't get anything like that. You just, everything's tunnel focused on A, get more Christians, and then B, make sure your offering is in the plate before you leave. So I mean,
I grew up Baptist, and
I'm sorry.
I was a nerd. So my youth leader literally used to tell me I would go to hell if I read like books that had magic in it.
Oh my God.
And that's about the time
Man.
I was like, I'm done.
I was in 6th grade, and my teacher, and I was reading about the Greek gods, and I had a book on Hecate, and my teacher pulled me up in front of. I'm older, probably. I'm assuming.
So
just
Joel's
from the
like
sound of your voice,
satanic
you're-
panic.
Yeah,
times.
I was in school in the Satanic Panic, so this was like 1988, and I was pulled up in front of the class and accused of being a practicing Satanist, and like openly shamed to the point where like I was like, I gotta leave this school.
You're like,
Oh,
what are you
because I
talking
read
about?
a
I
book.
got this book from the school library.
I did get the book from the school library. I even pointed out, I'm like, why is it here then?
Yeah.
And her response was, they keep occultic literature so it won't get out of the community. I was like, wow. But yet you keep it in circulation for like a 6th grader to go grab it?
That's one step away.
Shouldn't it be in the restricted section then?
Right.
I was gonna say, like hoarding material so it can't be distributed is one step away from let's burn it so nobody reads it.
Right.
It's a very
But they left it in circulation for junior high students to get it and then actively practice Satan.
You should have gone the other way. You should have been like, release me from these binds or I will curse
Yeah,
you all.
Baptists are rough. Like there's no joke. That's a rough upbringing because they are slightly, barely noticeably, incredibly opinionated, and their opinions are never good. So
Yeah. Back to Loki.
So curious now, since we have a guest.
All right.
What do you still follow kind of the Nordic faiths? Are you pagan? I mean, how do you identify at this moment, if you don't mind me asking?
I just kind of did it with him, and I was very open to it, but I didn't really believe in it. I don't really believe in anything. It's like I was saying earlier, I don't believe that it's fake enough to be like, that's not real. But I'm not.
It's not for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lack of faith.
Yeah, that's a very common thing for people who have been raised in the less I don't know, the people that are raised like Catholic foods and the more studied paths of Christianity tend to kind of like stick a little bit longer. But those of us that were raised in the Wild West, like the Pentecostals and the Baptists, those we tend to be a little bit more on the I'm good with it not being anything else. But I do respect the beliefs. I do respect the religions. I do respect the beliefs and the adherence to something. If that's your thing, awesome. And more power to you, you know. I love the stories, and it matters a lot. And it shaped cultures as, you know, for hundreds and hundreds of years. So whether real or not, the stories are there, and the stories are great.
Indeed. I'm going to dip out of voice so you guys can keep doing
it was
your
a
discussion.
pleasure.
That's fair. Thanks for jumping on.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice
you so
to
much.
talk with you.
Yeah.
Yes, that was cool. Thanks. That was fun.
Yeah. Well, hello. Thank you, Lola, for jumping on and giving your 2 cents. We'll continue on a little bit with some more Loki shenanigans. So we didn't really give like a overview on Loki, but beyond like a couple things where he pops up in the Thor mythos.
You know,
but,
Loki is directly responsible for Thor getting his hammer too, I believe. He was the one that bit the smith in the face, and resulting in the handle being too small, which is why Thor claimed it. Because it fit in his hand just fine, but the person it was intended for, he's like, I don't want it. And Thor's like, I'll take it. This is great.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a bunch of different stories about it, but I believe it was Loki had turned into a horsefly and bit the smith in the face as he was wrapping up Mjolnir. And so the handle was a hand too short.
Yeah. So essentially, Loki would kind of like pop up, and he'd kind of be just like he wasn't necessarily the conflict, but he'd show up and pop up in like the myths with Odin and Loki and Thor, where sometimes he'd have these like genius plans that'd solve everything, but other times it'd just be like make things difficult for everybody.
It seemed like Loki took kind of the route of the medieval devil. You know, anything that was bad, they're like, Loki did it. You know, anything that went good, they're like, another god did it. But they needed like across the board. Yeah, across the board, you know, this is your fault, shit's not working.
Yeah, so like the one of the big ones is like this dude shows up, this giant, and he's like, because the gods want to build a big ass wall around Asgard, and this giant's like, I can get it done before next winter, and they're like, I don't believe you, and then Loki's like, the gods can't decide on what they want to do, and then Loki's like, listen, it's like because he basically his price for that was marriage to the goddess Freya.
Always Freya.
Yeah, so. Essentially what would happen was Loki's like, nah, there's no way this guy can do it. And so basically he said, I'll build the wall, but only if you pray me by giving me Freya. And Loki's like, well, if he can't do it in a single season, then he doesn't get it. And so,
he doesn't get anything. He doesn't get anything at all.
Yeah. So like this dude starts building the wall, and he's about to get it done. He's got the help of his
horse's name is wow.
Yeah, it's hold on, I got it.
Silvafari? Silvafari or whatever. Wow, that's a hell of a name. SVAO with the thing over it. ILFARI. Yeah.
I'm not even gonna try that one.
Yeah.
Come on, I want to Maximus.
And they were.
By Odin's beard, have you ceased in touching me?
Svadilfari, Svadilfari, something along that runs.
That sounds like something
basically,
you would drunkenly say.
Svadilfari.
Yes, Svadilfari.
Yeah,
that's how you speak.
And the giant's like the giant, even though he said I could build. Max, get down.
There's gonna be a murder on this stream.
Thank you for giving me the dice. That was very nice of you.
You gotta get a hypno crystal like I have for your child.
I know it doesn't work. It doesn't work anymore, Joel.
Look at her eyes. She just follows it around.
Basically.
So this, what was cool? Well, like they had, and now, so he's shortchanged this guy. Like, hold on, I'm just picking up, throwing in a detail that I found about it. This is also Neil Gaiman's Norse gods. Is not only did he have to build the wall, like he had to build the wall so tight you could not fit something in it.
Yes.
Like you could not slip a blade in it.
Yeah.
I think it was a piece of paper or something like that. But they had to be. So not only did they're like, hey, you got to do this 3 times as fast. It's also got to be so well fit together that like we can't stick like a dagger in between it or anything. Like it's got to be. They had specs.
Yeah. So like basically. They get through this, and 3 days until winter's supposed to happen. He's got the help of his like mighty giant stallion. The only thing that was left to be done was the stones around the gate to be put in place, and like the gods are like, Loki.
Oh shit! Yeah. Well, at first
why did you do this? And they like were like, we'll kill you if he takes Freya.
Well, at first, remember they were super jazzed because they thought like, there's no way. Loki himself was like, no way this will happen. It's impossible to get it done in this time. He said 3 seasons. We're getting him down to 1. Like, he really thought, like, it's going to get back to where you just pretty much have to finish, like, a third of the section. And he actually said that. Was like, hey, you only need this much. We'll at least get 2/3 of a wall built, and then we won't have to build it ourselves. Yeah, so they were all really Loki, you're brilliant.
The other problem was like if this giant got Freya, it would bring never-ending darkness to the nine realms because she's like the god of the sun and the moon.
Yeah, they loaded her up with a lot of responsibilities and traded her off quite frequently.
Yeah, so like every night, like the giant and his like stallion would go out into the forest looking for stones. And then along their way, a mayor showed up who was pretty much, this was Loki in disguise. And like basically like lured the stallion away. And they did the dirty and ran all night. And then they were too tired the next day to the giant's horse was still gone, and he was too tired the next day to do the thing.
And what's funny is the Norse gods thought that Loki had ran away because
at the end of this, because he failed to finish the wall in time, he was paid the wages they deemed he deserved. A fatal blow from Thor's hammer, which shattered his head into pieces no bigger than breadcrumbs.
Yeah, because they're dicks. That's what might makes right. They're like, so that's an all or nothing. You know, you get the sun and the moon, or hit in the face. Like,
or you die.
That's a sound deal.
There's a large gulf between those two.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna say, if that's true, Loki really had a future in sales, because I would never have taken that deal. Like, I don't even know how you got that how they negotiated into that chasm.
Imagine Loki flipping used cars. Just imagine.
Another fun Loki screwing up and making his own problems where he's almost going to get killed story is the kidnapping of Idun, which is another like really pretty.
I forgot about that one. Yeah, the one she grows the apples of immortality.
He gets captured by a giant. She's the god of like the harvest sort of thing, and she grows the apples that allow the giants to be immortal, or the gods to be immortal.
The gods to be immortal, yeah.
And he gets captured by a giant named Thiazi, who says, "I'm going to kill you unless you bring me Idun." And Loki's like, "Fine, fine, fine." And then he captures Idun and brings him to Thiazi. And then the gods are like, "I'm going to kill you unless you bring her back." So he immediately was like, he turns into a falcon, runs over, grabs Idun, runs back, while furiously getting pursued by Thiazi in the form of an eagle. But right as Thiazi's about to take him, Loki makes it back into Asgard, and the gods turn on their like fire perimeter defense on the fortress and burn Thiazi to cinders.
More you hear, like read the stories, you're like,
every Loki story is Loki fucks up and then fix it again.
It's a lot of the stories are like the classic, because these are not like the deities. These are humanish deities. They all have human characteristics. They're conniving. Human. They're not the like, they walk around in perfection.
Yeah.
As in like a lot of the people try to pretend they are.
Yeah.
These are gods that are like, oh shit, I didn't know that was gonna work. Like that's this is not how I planned this to be.
They're
very, very fallible.
Their faults and their destructive tendencies are in proportion to their deification. It's just like everything's balls to the wall.
But then there's some that you don't really understand how they exist. Like when I listen, and I was looking originally, we were going to try to do a number of them, but we're like, now we're going to extend Norse for a while. I looked up to the blind god Hod. He's the god of winter and darkness, and he's blind, and he's just pathetic as shit. Like he doesn't do. He did like, what does he do? He mopes around in the darkness. And the one time he was asked to like be part of anything was to stab Balder with the Mistral spear and kill him, which then he immediately got murdered for. And you're like, these gods don't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I feel like if 90% of your time is fighting and then telling the stories about what you did over mead, your gods are going to get pretty messed up.
He's a jobber in wrestling terms. He's a jabroni. He's just there to make the other gods look good.
What's another interesting thing about Loki is that eventually all the gods get tired of his shit when he finally causes one of them to die.
Yeah, Balder.
Which we'll get into it another time.
Yes.
Loki was bound to a rock by the entrails of his sons as punishment.
That literally is why the Norwegians invented black metal.
They also killed one of his other kids, who was like a serpent that would constantly drip horrible poison into his eyes and wounds. And then he would only be considered... the only time he would become free was at Ragnarok. Eventually, they got so tired of his shit that they just chained him to a rock and just started dripping poison into his eyes.
Yeah, which you're like, and then they're like, "Why is Loki leading Ragnarok?" I wonder. I feel like
I wonder why.
I feel like that's how you cause a supervillain.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of times you see these Greek. No, you're correct too. Greek are the same way. These mythologies, these pantheons where these the gods create have their own form of hubris where they cause their own problems.
Yes, I actually enjoy those type of stories because it's like if you're looking at something that is supposed to be like your leader, it's really hard to look up to something that's absolutely infallible and then be like, well, how do you measure up? How do you even identify with it? But these, like the Norse gods, they failed well. I would just say they were advanced at it. They're unnecessarily strong. Some of them have a lot of common sense. Some have none. And they all just it created some very entertaining stories. Our next week, are we going to continue with more Norse gods?
Well, next week, we'll get into that. But next week, we will be doing our book talk on Red Rising.
Starting the series. Are we going to do that whole series? Because that was amazing.
I think we might have to.
Yeah, I would like to go all the way to the trip.
We are going to be doing our next book on Red Rising
Oh my god!
by Pierce Brown.
Our production budget has gone way through the roof.
Yeah, wow, look at that.
Ever since our D&D mail stripping number, well, it's just budget through the roof.
Where we'll be discussing that book by Pierce Brown, and based off of how everyone enjoys it, we're going to have a couple of extra guests this week or next week, and
one is actually working on a production of
we
Red
will.
Rising.
For those of you who have been with us since the beginning, David
4 times.
is
David will be
returning.
returning. Yes, but not for the games.
At least for the talk about the book.
Yes.
So,
Talk for the book.
so we're gonna do that, but then the following week we will go back to our. We'll continue our topics on Norse gods, and I apologize if this one was a little bit unorganized. We kind of decided to change the format of the show like right before this episode, so.
Yeah,
my bad.
Yeah,
but
we came to and not to mention this week. I don't know if it was just me, but this week was like a hurricane of stuff.
Yeah, and it's only
Like-
Monday.
yeah, it's Monday.
Well, this week and last week, like all of it's a hurricane of stuff. And I wrapped up my classes, and then of course, this young lady who's always so cooperative. I was surprised.
Harbinger of destruction.
Also-
chaos.
For anybody who's in the Central Illinois area, we're going to be at Adepticon this week. At least a couple of us. So if you see us, don't hesitate to say hi.
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
Yeah.
We'll probably be at the open tables. We're definitely going to be buying and selling for sure. We couldn't get any tickets to any of the main events, so I don't even think we have armies ready. Got little bits and pieces, but we'll be playing some skirmish games on the open tables.
Yeah. So if you see us and you recognize us, please do come give us a shout out. We would appreciate it. But with that, we've kind of reached the end of this episode, and thanks everybody for watching. And we'll see you again on Wednesday for a continuation of Mop's little storyline. So.
Wednesday?
Where he's confronting his old master.
Yes.
Actually, sorry.
And Mills.
We might move to Thursday because of Joel's availability. We still need to talk amongst the group and confirm that if people
Wednesday's
are able
fine.
to do that.
You can. I don't.